Hello, welcome back to Blenderian LIVENODING. In this episode, I want to share with you this geometry node setup. Basically, was inspired by, you might actually notice this in the past. I've done this a couple of times. One of them is based on this Korin Tower. But it's also kind of inspired by, designed by, like Turkish Lamp. Or actually, this is more like for Aboriginal Memorial Woods. Probably it's like a like a log, and it's all with different sizes and different shapes with different design. This is actually quite beautiful ideas, kind of like a reminder if life is fragile and short, and each one of them representative of the person who lived, who have left the earth or something. I call this the Blenderian Memorial. All right. So each one of them is actually just a separate objects with the same geometry node setup. This one have a couple of parameters that you can play with. The Z for the length of this pipe or logs, and there's also the count. This one just give you extra details if you need to. There's the scaling that's also controlling, I think, the scale of the noise itself. So it's almost like a pipe. So you can have multiples. You can create as many as you want, as many of different variations. I think the one that's missing probably the controller for the thickness. So let me explain very quickly. The node itself is really simple. I started with, you see something like this, group input and output. Okay, the input has all this parameter, and originally you might already notice this is just a simple lines, and I use a screw. So without the screw, it's just a simple lines like this, and then I use this screw modifiers, and now we have this kind of pipe. Okay, so it's really simple. You can reposition the screw. You can actually move this so it can become like a thicker or in radius. For now, don't worry about that. You can see this is just a simple line that of which the position has been offset. So this option is really important, offset. And there's the snapping, so I'm controlling the snapping, so it will snap to a certain value. And then there's also, okay, there's this add, which is, okay, this is the offset for the radius. Apparently I did make that. So there's an offset, and there's this noise detail that you can play with, distortion if you want to. And you might, it might not be very obvious, but you can use the index. So mesh line have index, of course, like line, depending on the counts of the points, it will create index number from 0. So you can use something like math and sine wave, for example. So these numbers can go into the sine wave, and on top of that you can add it with a certain value number, and then you can combine this with the noise. Let's try doing that. So combine XYZ and math, vector math. Just combine this value together. Let's see, actually plug this here. Okay, this can go into the X. So we have sine wave happening. Let's multiply the sine wave with a value. Now we have something that a little bit more like a kind of like a Turkish design. It's almost, okay, it's maybe a little bit like Korin Tower, a little bit, but it's just like sine wave added together. This can actually be multiplier, so you can play around with these ideas. It's pretty cool. Okay, multiplier control the amplitude, and then you can, or the frequency rather. Yeah, so this is just a sine wave. On top of the sine wave, we have the noise, of course. We multiply it with the noise value, combine, whichever you like, subtract, add, and then we can play with this scale, the Z, and the count. So, I mean, the sine wave is probably too regular. Multiply, okay, multiply looks kind of nice, like this. So there's still sine wave happening. Maybe the sine wave can be multiplied again with another value, but you get the drill. Use the index and then connect that with a, you can have multiple sine wave, so you can have more varieties. I'll let you play around with this a little bit more. Not always not the easiest, but it's not hard. It's just values. So this is the amplitude, this is the frequency. Now this is two sine wave working together, creating new design. Yep. Let's see. Okay, including the noise. I mean, the design is now completely different. Play around with the size, the scale here, and then this is the Z-axis. Maybe reduce the count, because the count is actually affecting the number of points. That's why the design completely changes. It's kind of interesting. The W controlling the animations offset. So it's now looking like a little bit more like vase. Okay, if you increase the count, there's also, like I said, there's a snapping value, right? Snap value here. This is a vector math snapping value, which control how some values actually snap and creates a nice hard edge. It's in the x-axis only. So a couple of design there. I don't know. Yeah, like I said, it's got influence from Aboriginal Memorial, so it could be like Blenderian Memorial for Blenderian artists that have left the earth. Okay, but I have another setup similar. I call it typography madness. It's very similar. So it's basically just like a revolve thing. This one is slightly more elaborate. I think I went a little bit crazy here. I used a spiral and then just instance a couple of this design. Maybe if I just pick one of them. Okay, this is all the design. I'm just gonna grab one of them and try to explain the setup. Very similar. Okay, these geometry nodes and then screw. There's a randomized seed. There's the Z-axis and the resolutions. Okay. So what's going on here? I have also this string. Let's take a look. Okay, this is very similar. There's a set material in the end. Transform I didn't use. Instance on points. Okay, mesh line is just a simple line that I later screw into, like revolve into a 3D object. But I use the mesh line with text. So random text coming in. So I can have text like a really simple, maybe like A, B, C. and the ABC is actually being scattered. Let's reduce the resolutions. Before I screw the design, it's just like this. Okay, just simple basic text, rotate it 90 degrees. I use a fillet curves to get a slight variation on the design, but this is the curve, you know, like a curve, basic curve, and I fill the curve with triangle or n-gon, and I reset the position, and then I instance it. I use random instancing on here, so I can write whatever text 1 2 3, you know, it's gonna be scattered. I can play around with scaling. It's a little bit tilted somehow, and then I use screw. So I screw the text and I get this design. I mean, I think the design should be a little bit more complicated. I don't know what's going on in there, but it's just the letter that's been randomized. There you go. So if you imagine like a text or like font letter that's been scattered along the line, and then we get a different design. Look, this is also pretty interesting. It's pretty crazy. You can randomize the seed, you get totally different design from letter, and you already have some characteristic from the font, from the typeface, and you can increase or decrease the Z axis, and you can play around with the resolutions. Okay, so a lot of different designs. Simply, I mean, the idea is really simple. Just font, letter stacked together on top of lines. So yeah, it could be also like Blenderian Memorial this time with some font. I'm using Futura, but I can replace the font with a different font and totally get a different look. Yeah, I think it's the design already changed a lot simply by replacing the typeface. This is the rotations and fillet, fill. Maybe I don't even need the fillet. And scatter instance on points, set material. Okay, we have something. Smooth shading, okay. With the screw, you can actually have the maybe 4x4, so you have like box shape. That's kind of nice. So whatever stack, I think I have. So with this design, I have this setup. So each one have a tower, and then I assign material here. So if we go back to the one before, typography madness. Okay, this design. Okay, I simply put them all into single collections. I call them tower, and I use a spiral. And I simply use the spiral points to scatter this tower. So it's it looks like a memorial now, like Blenderian Memorial. And you can of course use just a simple circle. I think it's kind of nice from the top view. Instance on points, collection, scatter, and randomize. You can use a random value, integer, plug this into this instance index. Okay, yeah, the Blenderians memorials for the Blender artists, because we live just temporarily, you know. It's I guess it's quite something. Aboriginal Memorial, yeah. And if you want to, okay, the whole thing can be procedural. I mean, the shader, I didn't work on the shader. You can try, make some kind of design on the shader of this memorial stick, or you can paint it yourself using vertex. let me maybe try doing that next time. But anyway, thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.